The winter evening was cold in a Midwestern town circa 1910. A woman stood by a front window, her shawl pulled tight, watching the empty street and waiting for her husband to return from the saloon. The children slept in their beds, but she knew that when he finally stumbled in, often well past midnight, there might be trouble. He had once been gentle and steady. Over the years, whiskey had changed him. A payday binge could mean an empty pantry, a slammed door, a bruise. She had seen enough to feel her heart pound with dread and then harden into resolve. This could not continue. A few blocks away, a small congregation of women gathered outside the roughest tavern in town. They were not there to drink. They were there to be seen and heard. They held Bibles in their gloved hands and sang hymns into the icy air, imploring the men inside to go home. A door swung open, laughter spilled out, and a burly patron peered into the night, only to recognize his own wife among the singers. His swagger faltered. He muttered and shut the door. The women kept singing. One held the hand of a child, perhaps hoping the sight alone might cut through the noise and smoke inside. This was not a spontaneous outburst, but part of a growing crusade to protect families from what they called the demon run. By the early 20th century, the United States was deep in the throes of what many saw as an epidemic of alcoholism. Saloons dotted every city and small town, often open from dawn until late at night. Heavy drinking, especially by men, was commonplace, and public drunkenness, domestic violence, and workplace accidents related to alcohol were on the rise. The country was also undergoing rapid transformations. There was breakneck industrial growth, which meant people flooding into crowded cities to work in factories. There were new immigrants arriving with their own drinking customs, German beer gardens, Irish pubs, Italian wine at dinner. Social norms were being upended, and many Americans felt a kind of moral panic amid these changes. To a lot of them, the bottle became the symbol of all that was going wrong. The factory worker who drank his wages and could not feed his family. The young hoodlums causing trouble under the influence. The corrupt city politicians in cahoots with saloon owners. Out of this stew of concern, the temperance movement gained incredible momentum. It started earlier, in the 19th century, as a call for moderation. But as the years passed and alcohol problems seemed ever more dire, the movement's message hardened into one of total prohibition. Driving this movement were often women. Women and children bore the brunt of alcohol's destructive side. They were the ones left hungry if the paycheck was drunk away, or bruised and terrified by an abusive alcoholic husband, at a time when women had virtually no legal recourse or rights within marriage. In 1874, these concerns coalesced into a formidable organization, the Women's Christian Temperance Union. If a woman of that era had suffered because of alcohol, joining the WCTU gave her a chance to fight back. Under the leadership of dynamic figures like Frances Willard, the WCTU spread a powerful message that God and goodness were on the side of temperance. They marched, they prayed, they lobbied local officials to shut down bars. Some even took direct action into their own hands. The most famous example being Carrie Nation, a stout middle-aged woman in Kansas who believed she was on a mission from God to destroy saloons. Wielding a hatchet, she would stride into taverns unannounced, smash every bottle and barrel in sight, and berate the drinkers for their sins. These dramatic hatchetations, as they were called, made her a national figure. Many in the temperance movement hailed her courage, while opponents saw her as a fanatic. But Carrie Nation's crusade vividly captured the desperation and zeal driving the cause. Alongside the grassroots energy of the WCTU came the political muscle of the Anti-Saloon League, founded in 1895. The ASL was a more pragmatic, politically savvy operation. The ASL was laser-focused on one goal: eliminate alcohol. They organized church congregations into voting blocks, ran intense letter-writing campaigns, and effectively delivered an ultimatum: support prohibition or lose office. Politicians soon learned that defying the ASL could mean career suicide. The League became a master of the political ground game, printing pamphlets, holding rallies, and turning out disciplined voters who would tip elections in favor of dry candidates. The broader anxieties of the time also fed the push for prohibition. Protestant rural Americans looked at the influx of Catholic immigrants from Ireland, Italy, Germany, and elsewhere, many of whom had drinking customs as part of their heritage, and worried that their way of life was under threat. German-American families gathered in beer gardens on Sundays. Italian households poured a glass of wine at dinner. As nativist sentiment grew, such ordinary customs were caricatured as part of the liquor problem. Saloons in big cities were often run by immigrants and frequented by immigrant workers. To dry crusaders, these establishments were breeding grounds of sin and corruption. Places where men wasted their pay, where brothels and gambling lurked in the back rooms, and political bosses cut deals upstairs. By the 1910s, the movement to ban alcohol entirely had shifted from a far-fetched idea to a very real political possibility. State after state was holding referendums and passing laws to go dry. In many communities, alcohol was already banned at the local level. The momentum was clearly building towards something national. Episode continues with third-person narration throughout.